6 Soviet Yak-3 fighters close in. Formation tightens. The P-51 Mustang's fuel gauge reads empty. 2 minutes of flying time, maybe less. Behind, rolling farmland and the sky full of intent. Ahead, the Adriatic coast, 40 miles away. The pilot's hands rest steady on the yoke. No tremor, no panic, just mathematics and the memory of a conversation he wasn't supposed to remember. The radio crackles. Ground control orders compliance. Land immediately. He doesn't respond. He never planned to. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. In 6 seconds, everything changes. Not through speed or strength. Through something his squadron laughed at for months. A principle so simple, so counterintuitive, that trained military pilots dismissed it as suicide. But suicide and calculated risk are different things. And Lieutenant James Foster knew the difference. This is the story of a man nobody believed in until the sky proved them wrong. The air tastes like avgas and desperation. Dust hangs permanent above the airfield. 200 bombers sit in revetments, patched and ready. P-51 Mustangs taxi in formation, their radial engines growling in unison. The heat is suffocating. At 10,000 feet, the cockpit becomes a furnace. At 25,000, the oxygen mask freezes to your face. The war over Europe has become a war of mathematics. Fuel consumption versus mission range. Altitude advantage versus ammunition reserves. Aircraft lost versus pilots trained. Everything converts to numbers. And the numbers are running against the Americans. By late 1944, the Luftwaffe is losing. But it isn't dead. It's cornered. Desperate pilots fly with nothing left to lose. They fight harder at the end than at the beginning. The 8th Air Force understands this, which is why losses are climbing despite German weakness. The strategic bombing campaign demands deep penetration. Targets in Austria, Hungary, Romania. Long missions over mountains where the air is thin and navigation is prayer disguised as instruments. When bombers reach the target, they're surrounded by enemy territory. All of it hostile. The flight home is longer than the flight out. Fuel reserves evaporate over the Balkans. Any mechanical failure, any battle damage, forces a decision. Crash in contested territory or land in Soviet-held zones. By autumn, more than 80 Allied airmen sit in Soviet custody. Supposed to be temporary. Supposed to be routine repatriation. Instead, they're leverage. Diplomatic chips in a game no one will explain to the pilots who are living it. The orders are clear. If you must land in Soviet territory, comply. They're allies. You'll be returned. But the men in the ready room know better. They've seen the lists. They've heard the stories. Compliance equals months of captivity while the war continues without you. Interrogation rooms. Paperwork. Promises that shift like wind. Some pilots have tried to run. They didn't make it. The Yaks are fast. They know the terrain. They have fuel in nearby airfields. One P-51 pilot tried an impossible maneuver over Yugoslavia. He augured in. Another made it 5 miles before his fuel died. He ditched near the coast. Spent a week walking through mountains before partisans found him. The problem has no solution. Avoid Soviet airspace or accept captivity. No middle ground. No option where you keep both your freedom and your life. Then came the conversation that nobody took seriously. James Foster is 23 years old. Thin shoulders. Pale skin that doesn't tan, just burns. Wire-rimmed glasses that fog in humidity. Not the type of man who becomes a fighter pilot. Not the type anybody expects to survive a week in combat. He grew up in rural Pennsylvania. His father was a pharmacist. His mother taught mathematics. His younger brother collected insects and labeled them in Latin. The family lived in a house that smelled like books and quiet afternoons. War was something that happened in newspapers. Foster wasn't aggressive. Wasn't confident. Wasn't any of the things fighter pilots were supposed to be. In high school, he preferred mathematics to sports. He taught himself aerodynamics from library books. He spent months building model aircraft in his basement, testing them off a garage roof, recording performance data in notebooks. When the war started, he didn't enlist out of patriotism. He enrolled in the Army Air Forces because the problem interested him. Aerodynamics were fascinating. The intersection of theory and physics fascinated him more. Basic training was misery. He couldn't march in step. He couldn't follow orders without asking why. Instructors called him insubordinate. He called them illogical. By week 3, he was assigned to latrine duty. But he could fly. Somehow, despite everything else, he could fly. Cadet training in Arizona. 3 hours solo, and his instructor couldn't argue with the data. The boy controlled the aircraft with mechanical precision. No wasted movement. No unnecessary risk. Perfect coordination between control inputs and aircraft response. The instructor noted it in his file. Technically proficient. No killer instinct. Possibly unsuited for combat. Foster didn't care what the file said. He understood something about air that most pilots learned too late or never learned at all. Flying wasn't about courage. It was about understanding systems. About knowing what could break and why. About respecting the machine instead of fighting it. He arrived in Italy in June 1944, assigned to the 1st Fighter Group. 37 missions flew before anyone noticed him. 37 escort runs without a single confirmed kill. His squadron mates whispered about it. Lucky Foster. Or cautious Foster. Or maybe just weak. The squadron commander called him in after Mission 20. Wanted to know why he hadn't engaged enemy fighters. Foster explained. You engage when you have advantage. You don't waste ammunition and fuel on even odds. You let others take the shots that don't improve your chances. The commander said he sounded like a coward. Foster said he sounded like someone who planned to survive the war. The relationship never recovered. By July, Foster had a reputation. The thinking pilot. The one who watched more than fought. The one who came home with clean gun cameras and full ammunition loads while other men claimed kills. Not respected. Tolerated. Assigned to the slower escort flights where his cautious approach was almost appropriate. Nobody expected him to matter. The issue facing Allied fighters in late 1944 is tactical and brutal. German interceptors no longer dogfight. They can't. They're outnumbered 3-1. Instead, they slash. They dive through bomber formations with all guns firing. They kill bombers and cripple escorts. Then they run before the full weight of American superiority can respond. It's called boom and zoom. It works. Bomber losses in September exceed 10% per mission. That means 1 in 10 men don't come home. The mathematics are merciless. The Luftwaffe has maybe 300 pilots left in the European theater. But they're all veterans. Men with 50 missions, 100 missions. Men who know how to kill. Allied fighters try to counter this by intercepting earlier, engaging farther out, breaking formations sooner. But that spreads the escorts thin. Gaps open. And gaps get bombers killed. The math is a contradiction. You can't protect bombers and stop interceptors with the same number of aircraft. Squadron commanders push for more aggression, more willingness to take risks, more pilots willing to chase German fighters deep into enemy territory, far from the bomber stream. Foster sees the problem differently. He's not thinking about aggression. He's thinking about predictability. German interceptors expect American fighters to respond a certain way. They'll chase, they'll climb, they'll extend. They'll do exactly what's in the manual. What if you did something that violated every instinct? What if you did something no training prepares you for? The idea forms slowly. Months of observation. Notebooks filled with angles, speeds, position data. What happens when a pilot is surprised? How does he react? What are the first 3 seconds of response? What mistakes does aggression force him into? Foster knows the Bf-109 is faster in a dive, faster in sustained speed, better in a climb. But the Mustang has one advantage the Germans might not expect. The Mustang has better acceleration from slow speed. It can recover from a near stall faster than any German fighter. What if you forced a German pilot into a commitment? What if you made him think he had an easy kill? What if you made him overshoots into a position where his speed, his greatest advantage, became his greatest vulnerability? By August, Foster has sketched the concept. It violates doctrine. It assumes pilots will make predictable mistakes. It assumes precision timing. It assumes you'll recover from a stall at low altitude while under fire. He doesn't discuss it with anyone. He's learned that suggestion is weakness in a fighter squadron. Ideas come from confident men with kill counts. Ideas from a cautious kid from Pennsylvania sound like excuses. The target is a synthetic oil plant near Vienna, deep in Austria, surrounded by German airfields. Expected enemy opposition, heavy. Expected casualties, acceptable. The word acceptable does a lot of work in wartime English. 200 B-17 flying fortresses will carry the tonnage. 60 P-51 Mustangs will provide escort. Foster flies second element, trailing edge. His wingman is a lieutenant from Brooklyn. Young, eager, skilled. Hasn't been hit once in 14 missions. They brief at 0500 hours. Intelligence officer runs through the threat assessment. The Luftwaffe has committed Gruppen from 3 bases. They'll intercept along the route, hit the bombers, break off before the escorts can respond. Standard doctrine. It works. It's working every day. Foster listens. Doesn't ask questions. Doesn't volunteer. Just listens and files information the way he files everything. Data points. Variables. Possibilities. The engine's light at 0600. Blue flame from exhaust stacks. The Mustangs form up over the Adriatic. 48 aircraft in loose formation. They turn north over the Italian coast. The bombers are already ahead, visible as a dark smudge against the pale sky. The Bf-109s come from the northeast. 2 flights of 4, climbing hard, running for the bombers. The intercept formation is perfect. They'll hit the left flank of the bomber stream, fire, and dive away before American escorts can close. The radio explodes. Bandits high. Bandits north. Break right. Foster's squadron fragments. Each flight diving to intercept. The radio chatter becomes unintelligible. Calls overlap. The sky fills with aircraft. Foster doesn't chase the first formation. He climbs instead, gaining altitude while others are diving after Germans who are already running. His wingman follows, confused but obedient. At 26,000 feet, Foster spots what everyone else is missing. 2 Bf-109s separated from the main group. They've turned south, throttled back, waiting for American fighters to come down to them. It's a classic trap. The Germans climb. You chase. You run out of energy at altitude. They turn and kill you. Foster doesn't take the bait. He lets them be. Instead, he spots 2 more 109s circling low, at 18,000 feet, staying near the bombers, looking for stragglers. These are the real threat. Not the ones performing for air superiority. The ones hunting wounded bombers. He descends slowly. Doesn't commit. Stays high enough to maintain speed. The 2 Germans don't see him. They're focused on the bombers below, waiting for one to fall out of formation. Then one of the bombers takes damage. Flak hit. The right outboard engine trails smoke. The B-17 begins to slip behind formation. One of the German pilots sees it. Breaks off. Dives toward the damaged bomber. This is when most American fighters would dive too. Chase the German. Try to drive him off before he reaches the bomber. But Foster has thought about this. Has calculated it. Instead, he does something nobody expects. He throttles back. Reduces power. The Mustang slows. He opens the flap handle halfway. Not full flaps, just enough to increase drag. The aircraft descends at the same rate as the German 109, maintaining separation. His wingman radios. Lead, are you hit? Foster clicks twice. Stay high. The German pilot doesn't see Foster. He's focused entirely on the bomber. He's committed now. The B-17 is wounded, isolated, and the kill is easy. All he has to do is close to firing range. He dives. 300 yards. The closure rate is brutal. Foster has calculated it. The German will be at point-blank range in 6 seconds. The B-17 is finished. Unless something changes. At 400 yards closure, Foster moves. Full throttle. Hard left turn. The Mustang's nose comes around, not toward the German, but perpendicular to him. The German sees him. Too late. Foster is already firing. The German rolls right. Instinct, collision avoidance. The 109 brakes hard toward open sky. It's the wrong choice. Its speed is too high. Its turn radius is too wide at this altitude. And now Foster is inside that radius. 1 burst. 2 seconds. Tracers walk across the German's fuselage. The right wing sheds panels. The 109 rolls inverted and drops. No parachute. No recovery. The second German is already running. Foster doesn't chase. He extends instead, rebuilds speed, and climbs back to altitude where his advantages matter. The damaged B-17 holds formation. 1 crew survives because a cautious pilot understood something about physics that most men never learn. At debriefing, Foster files 1 confirmed kill. The squadron commander barely looks at the report. 1 kill in 40 missions. Lucky Foster hasn't improved. A pilot from another squadron transfers in. Name is Captain Monroe. He's grounded after an incident. Rammed another aircraft during a mock dogfight. Review board ruled it reckless. pulled him from combat rotation, assigned him to base duties. Monroe is bitter, talks constantly about politics, about how caution is rewarded over aggression, how the war will be won by men willing to break rules. Most pilots ignore him. But one afternoon, bored and restless, Monroe gives an informal talk in the ready room. Unconventional evasion tactics. Half serious, mostly defensive concepts. He sketches on the ready room wall. Talks about energy states, turning circles, closure rates. He describes a maneuver he's been developing. Theory only. Never tested in combat. The concept, when boxed in by multiple fighters, don't try to outrun or outturn them. Do the opposite. Decelerate violently. Drop flaps. Force the aircraft into a near stall. Pursuers traveling faster will overshoot. Their formation breaks. For a few seconds, you're behind them instead of in front. Then you dive. Use gravity to rebuild speed before they can reorient. One pilot asks the obvious question. What if you stall completely? Monroe shrugs. Then you die? But if you're already dead anyway, what's the risk? Most pilots laugh. Call it suicide. Tell him he was grounded for good reason. The room empties. Foster doesn't laugh. He stays. He asks technical questions. Airspeed thresholds. Flap angles. Recovery altitude. The margin between survival and failure. Monroe seems surprised anyone takes him seriously. They talk for an hour. Foster asks if anyone has actually done it. Monroe admits no. Only simulated in controlled conditions. No live pursuit. No combat variables. Foster doesn't ask more. He thanks Monroe and walks away. But he's running calculations. Speed curves. Turn radius versus altitude. Stall characteristics of the Mustang at different weights and configurations. Monroe's maneuver is theoretically sound, but it's incomplete. It assumes you'll have time to recover. It assumes the pursuers will overshoot cleanly. It assumes you'll have enough altitude to make it work. What if you refine the timing? What if you understood exactly when to brake, how hard to brake, how long the recovery window actually is? Foster starts a new notebook. Sketches detailed diagrams. Energy states in red. Turn radius in blue. Recovery altitude in black. He calculates margins. Not comfortable margins. Real margins. The difference between survival and crater. By October, he's done the theoretical work. The question now is practice. But you can't test a maneuver in combat without accepting the risk of dying in testing. He files it away with all the other edge case knowledge he's accumulated. Unlikely to matter, but filed, just in case. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. A photographic reconnaissance mission is planned. Deep penetration into Romania. Photography only. No bombing run. The P-51 carries cameras instead of some ammunition. Limited defensive capability. But the range is perfect and the cloud cover is forecast to be minimal. Foster volunteers. No one questions it. A cautious pilot on a reconnaissance mission makes sense. The flight is scheduled for 6 aircraft. Foster leads 2, the photo birds. For more, are dedicated escort. They launch at 0700 hours. The route takes them over Hungary, into Romanian airspace, then back. 8 hours of flying. Fuel is calculated to the minute. No margin for deviation. The flight to Romania proceeds smoothly. The weather cooperates. The target is reached, photographed, documented. By 1400 hours, they're heading home. Then the radio crackles. Air defense warning from a Soviet reporting station. Unidentified aircraft heading west at high speed. Likely American. Intercept is being launched. Foster knows what this means. Soviet Yak fighters. Probably from an airfield near Nish. He's heard the briefing before. Soviet interceptors have mistaken Allied aircraft for German ones. Interceptions have become aggressive. One pilot died. Several have landed in Soviet territory and disappeared into diplomatic fog. The orders are clear. If intercepted by Soviet forces, comply with instructions. Do not resist. The aircraft are allies. Repatriation will be routine. But Foster has read the intelligence reports. He knows routine means months of waiting. Bureaucratic delays. Interrogations. Isolation in a barracks while the war continues without him. He checks his fuel. The photographic load is heavier than normal ammunition. The aircraft is slower. The fuel consumption is higher. The route home is longer than calculated. He does the math. They won't make the coast before the Yaks intercept. When they do, he'll be low on fuel. Low fuel means no energy margin. No energy margin means no options. He considers deviating, flying north through Yugoslavia. It's partisan-held territory. Dangerous, but not captivity. But diversion means using more fuel. The mathematics don't support it. The only variable he can control is what happens after interception. 30 minutes later, a flight of Yak-3 fighters closes formation. 9 aircraft. Formation is perfect. No gaps. Overlapping fields of fire. The standard configuration for forcing compliance. The radio crackles in Russian. Then in English. Follow us. Land at Nish airfield. Comply immediately. Foster acknowledges. He reduces speed. Adjusts heading. Makes it appear he's complying. His wingman is confused. Foster keys the radio twice. Stand by. The Yaks relax. They've done this before. American pilots always comply eventually. The kill is already made. Just the paperwork left. Foster watches the lead Yak. Calculates speed. Estimates altitude. Measures the distance to the trailing pair. Everything is data. Everything is variables. The margin between survival and captivity is probably 6 seconds. He's ready. He's been ready since he heard Monroe's briefing. He's calculated this exact scenario 100 times in his notebooks. He thinks about his crew chief, who serviced his aircraft every day without complaint. He thinks about the bomber crew he saved in September. He thinks about the difference between calculated risk and surrender. He makes his decision. The lead Yak slows further. Signal to descend toward the airfield. Foster matches the speed. The formation stabilizes. Everyone is in position. Relaxed. Professional. Foster counts silently. 1, 2, 3. He reviews the variables one final time. Speed differential between the Yak's momentum and his deceleration. Approximately 150 miles per hour. Turn radius at current speed. Predictable. Recovery altitude available. 2,000 feet. Enough. 4, 5, 6. He chops both throttles simultaneously. Full stop. No gradual reduction. Instant power loss. The Mustang shudders. He drops full flaps. The aircraft's nose pitches up. Airspeed collapses. Every instinct screams to add power. He ignores it. The Yaks overshoot immediately. The lead aircraft shoots forward 100 yards in less than 2 seconds. The side escorts blow past him like he stopped in air. The trailing pair break left and right, reflexive avoidance. For 3 seconds, the formation is chaos. Foster's stall warning shakes the stick violently. Airspeed falls through 90 knots. 80. The aircraft mushes. It's on the edge of an unrecoverable stall. The controls are mushy. The margin between recovery and crash is seconds. He shoves the yoke forward aggressively. -G. His stomach rises into his throat. He retracts flaps. Slams both throttles forward. The engines spool. There's a half-second lag as the turbos catch. Then power floods back. The Mustang dives. 40 degrees. 50. Gravity pulls him through 200 knots in seconds. The Yaks are above him now, scattered, turning hard to reacquire. But he's already gone. Low and fast. 30 feet off the ground. Foster extends westbound at full throttle. The engine temperature climbs into the red. He ignores it. The Yaks recover formation quickly. Professional pilots. They don't panic. They roll into pursuit. His fuel gauge reads 5 minutes. The Adriatic is 50 miles away. He'll need 5 minutes to reach the coast. The math doesn't work. It never did. But the maneuver bought him 60 seconds. 60 seconds becomes 90. 90 becomes 2 minutes. The Yaks are fast, but he has a head start in gravity. He's flying low enough that ground effect gives him 5 extra knots. Everything counts. Behind him, the Yak pilots are disciplined. They maintain formation. No wild maneuvering. Just steady pursuit. They know the physics. He's burning fuel at war emergency power. They have reserves. Time is on their side. Foster holds 30 feet altitude. Any lower, and a wingtip catches ground. Any higher, and he loses ground effect. The plane rides a cushion of compressed air. Barely. The horizon rushes past. Fuel gauge, for minutes. Maybe 3.5. The terrain is flat. No canyons, no cover. Just open farmland bleeding toward the coast. The Adriatic is there somewhere. Beyond sight. But there. The Yaks close. Steady. Inexorable. They're faster in level flight. He's committed now. He can't climb. Can't turn. Can only run and hope the coast appears before the fuel dies. 3 minutes. The needles hover near empty. He's breathing shallow. Adrenaline makes everything sound wrong. The engine pitch is too high. The wind noise is too loud. The yaks are getting closer. He considers his options. He can't outrun them. Can't outturn them. The only variable left is fuel. Theirs versus his. Except they have fuel and he doesn't. Unless he stops using his. The plan forms instantly. Cut engines before they die. Glide. The Mustang has a glide ratio of about 9-to-1. From 30 feet, that's nothing. But if he climbs first, trade speed for altitude, he can stretch it. 2,000 feet gives him a mile. Maybe more. But climbing means slowing. And slowing means the yaks close. Then he stalls halfway up. And there's no dive to save him this time. He needs another distraction. Another moment of chaos. At 1,000 feet altitude, he rolls inverted and pulls through a split S-turn. Head-on with 9 Soviet fighters. It's insane. It's also geometry. The yaks scatter on instinct. Collision avoidance. No time to think. Just react. 9 aircraft braking in different directions. Formation explodes. Foster rolls upright and dives through the gap they just created. Full throttle. The engines give him everything. 10 seconds. 15. Then the right engine coughs. Sputters. Fuel starvation. He punches the left throttle forward. Asymmetric thrust. The plane yells hard. He corrects with rudder. The left engine runs for 5 more seconds, then silence. Both engines quit within a heartbeat. The sudden quiet is disorienting. No roar. No vibration. Just wind noise and silence. He's at 1,200 feet. Airspeed 200 knots. He pulls the nose up. Bleeds speed into altitude. 1,500 feet. 1,700. Airspeed falls to 160. He levels off. The controls go soft. He trims for best glide speed. 140 knots. Behind him, the yaks recover from the scatter. They spot him, begin pursuit. But he's not running anymore. He's gliding. Dead stick. No power. No threat. They orbit him. Confused. They've chased hundreds of aircraft. They've never seen this. A Mustang spiraling down on dead engines. Already finished. He glides west. The world passes below, slower now. No engine to push him. Just gravity and aerodynamics. The terrain blurs. Ground details resolve. The horizon lightens. The Adriatic appears. A line of silver-gray water. He's not going to make the coast. The math is clear. He'll hit ground a mile short. But a mile short of the coast is still partisan territory. Neutral ground. Not Soviet-controlled. If he survives the landing, he has a chance. One of the Yak pilots pulls alongside. 50 yards. The Soviet pilot's face is visible. Young. Surprised. He gestures, motions downward, telling Foster to land. Foster shakes his head. Points west. The Soviet pilot holds his gaze for a moment. Then peels away. The Yaks don't follow him down. They circle once more, then turn east back toward Nish. Their fuel is low too. And there's no point. The Mustang is gliding. Already dead. The kill is already made. Foster is alone at 500 feet. The coast is a mile ahead. He's not going to make it. Not over land. But he'll hit water. Maybe 100 yards offshore. Shallow. Survivable. The beach is visible. Rocky. No boats. No people. Just empty shoreline stretching toward the gray horizon. He tightens his harness. Unlocks the canopy. Braces. The water rushes up. He flares. Pulls the nose up. Bleeds off speed. The tail hits first. Then the fuselage skips once, twice. The nose dips. The plane noses down into the silt. The impact is violent. Water explodes around the canopy. The airframe shudders. Metal screams. He's weightless for a moment. Then everything is cold. Water pours into the cockpit. He yanks the harness release. Kicks free. Pulls himself out. The plane is sinking. Both booms above water. The cockpit already submerged. He swims to shore. The water is shallow. His feet touch bottom at 4 feet deep. He stands, wades toward the rocks, breathing hard, shaking from cold and adrenaline crash. He's alive. He looks east. The sky is empty. The Yaks are gone. He looks west. The Adriatic stretches to the horizon. Behind him, the P-51's tail booms protrude from the shallows like grave markers. Intelligence officers want details. The intercept, the evasion, how he escaped 9 fighters. He describes the maneuver, the throttle chop, the stall, the dive. They take notes. Ask him to repeat sections. Draw diagrams. One officer asks if he thought the Soviets would have shot him down. He says he didn't know. He didn't wait to find out. They ask if the maneuver was part of standard training. He says no. It was something he'd heard once. Theoretical. He made it work. The officers exchange looks. They ask if he would teach it. Brief other pilots. He says he could, but he doesn't recommend it. Too many variables. Too easy to stall. It's a desperation move. Last resort. They thank him, tell him to rest. He returns to his squadron 3 days later. The story spreads quickly. Not officially, just word of mouth. Pilot talk. AP-51 evaded 9 Yaks over Nish. Pulled some kind of crazy stall maneuver. Glided to the coast on empty tanks. Walked out 4 days later. Other pilots want details. He gives them objectively. Clinically, he describes the physics. The timing. The risks. He emphasizes the risks. Tells them it could easily have killed him. Tells them not to try it unless they had no other option. But the idea takes hold. Not as doctrine, as possibility. Proof that evasion was feasible. That compliance wasn't the only option. 2 weeks later, another P-51 pilot is intercepted by Soviet fighters near the Romanian border. 6 Yaks. Same scenario. Orders to land. The pilot remembers Foster's story. Tries the maneuver. He chops throttle. Drops flaps. The Yaks overshoot. He dives. Outruns them. Made it back to base. A month later, a P-47 Thunderbolt pilot uses a variation. For Yaks, he doesn't have the Mustang's glide ratio, so he adapts. Stalls into the pursuit. Dives. Then uses terrain masking instead of gliding. It works. By December, the tactic has spread. Pilots discuss it in ready rooms. Compare notes. Refine the technique. It never becomes official. Commanders don't endorse it. Too risky, too unpredictable. But pilots use it anyway. When the alternative is internment, risk becomes acceptable. The Soviets adapt. Intercept formations widen. Pilots are briefed on the tactic. Warned to expect sudden deceleration. Maintain spacing. Don't overshoot. Some interceptions become more aggressive. Warning shots. Closer formations. But the psychological edge has shifted. Allied pilots no longer see Soviet intercepts as inevitable capture. They see options. Dangerous options, but options nonetheless. Internment rates drop. Not dramatically, but measurably. Intelligence reports note the change. Fewer Allied pilots in Soviet custody. More successful evasions. The diplomatic tension eases slightly. Repatriation requests are processed faster. By January 1945, the exact number of successful evasions using the stall maneuver is unclear. Estimates range from 8 to 15. Several pilots died attempting it. Stalled too low. Lost control. Augured in. But others made it. Glided to safety. Walked home. Foster flew 19 more missions. Completed his tour in March 1945. Never attempted the maneuver again. Never needed to. He received a Distinguished Flying Cross. The citation mentioned his evasion over Yugoslavia, but gave no details. Just extraordinary airmanship and courage under hostile conditions. He didn't attend the ceremony. He was already back in Pennsylvania, working at his father's pharmacy, learning to identify herbs and calculate dosages. Simple systems. Predictable variables. Nothing that would explode if you made a mistake. For 60 years, the incident stayed buried in military archives. A single report. Typed on onion skin. Faded. Cataloged, but rarely read. In 2003, a historian found it while researching Soviet-Allied air incidents during the final months of the war. Most reports were routine. This one wasn't. The historian tracked Foster down. Retirement home in Connecticut. 91 years old. Sharp. He remembered the intercept clearly. Described it without embellishment. Talked about fuel consumption rates and stall speeds. He still thought about the physics. The historian asked if he was afraid. Foster paused. He said fear wasn't the right word. Concern was closer. Concern that the math wouldn't work. That the engines wouldn't respond. That he'd miscalculated the glide. Fear implied uncertainty. He knew exactly what could go wrong. That wasn't fear. That was just information. The historian asked if he considered himself brave. Foster shook his head. He made a choice. Weighed variables. Acted. Bravery implied something extraordinary. He just used the tools available. A stall is a stall. Gravity is gravity. You either understand the system or you don't. The historian published the account in an aviation journal. Mild interest. A few letters. Small mention in a documentary about P-51 operations. But mostly it faded. One more footnote in a war full of them. Foster passed away in 2011. Quiet funeral. Family only. His son found boxes of papers in the attic. Flight logs. Technical diagrams. Sketches of aircraft modifications. Letters from other pilots who'd used the maneuver, thanking him, crediting him, telling him it saved their lives. His son donated the papers to an aviation museum in Connecticut. They sit in climate-controlled storage. Rarely viewed. Occasionally referenced. The maneuver itself is no longer taught. Modern aircraft have different performance envelopes, different escape options, ejection seats, advanced avionics. The physics remain the same, but the context has shifted. But the principle endures. In every cockpit, every decision made under pressure, understanding that systems have tolerances, that limits are not walls but gradients, that survival sometimes means operating at the edge of design parameters, not the center, not the safe zone, the edge. History remembers the bombers and the aces, the missions that turned wars, the battles with names. But wars are also won in moments no one sees, in improvised solutions, desperate physics, in spaces between doctrine and survival. Foster never considered himself exceptional. He saw a problem, applied logic, accepted consequences. That's all. But 9 Soviet pilots watched an American P-51 do something impossible. Watched it stall in midair, fall, recover, vanish toward the horizon. Watched it glide 50 miles on empty tanks and land in shallow water. They returned to base and filed reports. Warned others, adjusted tactics, and across Italy, pilots heard the story and filed it away. Just in case the fuel ran dry and the options narrowed and the only choice left was between surrender and physics. One man, one decision, one afternoon over Yugoslavia. The ripple moved outward. Quiet, persistent, uncounted. James Foster never became an ace. His kill count was 3. 3 confirmed kills, all from applied observation. All from understanding that the best fight is the one your opponent doesn't know he's in until it's over. His squadron's mates were right about one thing. He was different, wrong about everything else. He wasn't hopeless. He wasn't weak. He was just seeing something they hadn't learned yet. The difference between courage and calculation, between risk and recklessness, between surrender and survival. If this history matters to you, tap like and subscribe. Some legacies are carved in stone. Others are written in the physics of survival, in the space between instinct and thought, between panic and precision. Foster understood that space. He lived in it at 30 feet, engines dead, gliding toward a beach he couldn't see. And when his wheels touched water and the cockpit flooded and he stood shivering on wet rocks, he didn't feel victorious. He felt cold and alive and ready to calculate the walk home. That was enough. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now and don't forget to subscribe.